Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. China slashes additional tariffs on U.S. imports from 34% to just 10% in a move that could ease global trade tensions. One of the Philippines' largest business groups urges the new Congress to fast-track key economic reforms. The government studies seasonal tariffs on rice imports aimed at safeguarding farmers' income during harvest. And U.S. President Donald Trump announces plans to lift sanctions on Syria, a potential turning point for the war-torn nation. China announces it will reduce additional tariffs on U.S. imports from 34% to just 10% for a 90-day period starting Wednesday. The move comes after high-level trade talks between the world's two largest economies held in Switzerland over the weekend. China's Customs Tariff Commission says the adjustment complies with domestic laws, including its tariff, customs, and foreign trade policies, as well as key principles of international law. It also says the reduction reflects the shared interests of producers and consumers in both countries. The temporary truce between China and the U.S. could ease global trade tensions and stabilize supply chains, a positive signal for emerging markets like the Philippines. Lower tariffs could reduce the cost of imported inputs, open up new trade flows, and improve sentiment in export-driven sectors. But analysts warn that the 90-day window is short and uncertainty remains ahead of the next round of talks. Let's take a look at how global markets moved overnight. U.S. stocks closed mixed as traders grew optimistic over softer than expected inflation data and Monday's trade truce between the U.S. and China. The easing of tensions prompted several brokerage firms to lower the odds of a U.S. recession.
Our main concern in the moment is that interest rates probably just aren't likely to move, at least not anytime soon. The likelihood of a rate cut next month in June is still less than 50-50. It gets better progressively in July and forward because we did get at least some favorable news in the CPI report this morning that price pressure is coming down, at least on a headline basis. The core number remained unchanged, but on a headline basis, it was a best read in 4 years at 2.3% year over year. So that's good.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.6%. The S&P 500 edged up by 0.7%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq rose sharply up by 1.6%. Over in Europe, markets were also mixed. London's FTSE was flat with a slight downward bias, while Germany's DAX climbed 0.3%, and France's CAC 40 added 0.3% as well. Here at home, the Philippines now ranks 117th in the latest Human Development Index released by the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. In the 2023 report, the Philippines scored 0.72, slightly up from 0.71 in 2022. This places the country in the high human development category, but still below the regional average for East Asia and the Pacific. The HDI tracks progress in 3 core areas: health, education, and standard of living. For policymakers and the business sector, the ranking highlights urgent gaps in social investments as well as opportunities to improve long-term economic competitiveness. It also raises questions about how effectively growth translates into real quality of life for Filipinos. The Philippines now... Okay, we have that. Let's pull up the next story. Net inflows of foreign direct investments into the Philippines fall sharply in February, dropping to just over $500 million. Data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas shows FDI inflows sank to $556 million, down more than 61% from $1.4 billion in the same month last year. The BSP cites high base effects from last year's surge as a major factor behind the decline. But economists like RCBC's Michael Ricafort also point to growing global uncertainty, including President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs and protectionist policies. Ricafort says these shifts may be prompting multinationals to relocate investments back to the U.S. to avoid future trade barriers. Now, the drop underscores the challenge for emerging markets like the Philippines as they navigate a more fragmented, risk-aware investment landscape. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, urges the new Congress to prioritize key economic reforms following the midterm elections. The PCCI says these measures are essential to improving competitiveness and sustaining business growth. Top on their list, a new Magna Carta for micro, small, and medium enterprises to extend the mandatory loan allocation for small businesses. The group also wants to lift Bangko Central's regulatory cover on SB Corporation to enable more flexible, innovative lending for MSMEs. They're also backing the passage of the International Maritime Trade Competitiveness Act, aimed at making shipping charges more reasonable, transparent, and in line with global standards. The government's borrowing costs dropped last Tuesday as yields on short-term debt fell across the board. Data from the Bureau of Treasury shows that yields on the 91, 182, and 364-day Treasury bills declined to 5.6%, 5.65%, and 5.66% respectively, this on lower than last week's average rates. RTBC Chief Economist Michael Rickleford attributes the decline to dovish signals from local monetary authorities, who are now open to as much as 75 basis points of additional rate cuts for the rest of the year. This comes after the country's inflation rate dropped to 1.4%, its lowest level since 2019. The government is considering seasonal tariffs on rice imports to help protect farmers' income during peak harvest months. Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says that the move could stabilize farm gate prices by adjusting import duties based on the time of year. The proposal follows last year's tariff cut from 35% to 15%, aimed at lowering rice prices for consumers. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority shows that as of April, the average price of regular milled rice was 44 pesos and 45 centavos per kilo, down 13.3% year on year. The plan is now under review by the Committee on Tariff and Related Matters and could be elevated to top economic managers for approval. If implemented, the measure could balance affordable rice for consumers with a stronger safety net for farmers, a key issue ahead of the next planting cycle. Now, Meralco cuts power rates this May, lowering the overall electricity rate by 74 centavos to 12 pesos and 26 centavos per kilowatt hour. This translates to savings of around 150 pesos for households consuming 200 kilowatt hours per month. The drop is mainly driven by lower generation and transmission charges, particularly from cheaper power sourced through the wholesale electricity spot market and independent power producers. Generation charges alone dropped by 31 centavos per kilowatt hour. Meanwhile, Meralco says it maintains stable electricity supply during the midterm elections thanks to advanced preparations and the deployment of rapid response teams. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this morning. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of trading to the downside. The Nikkei 225 is down by 0.5%. Hong Kong's Shanghai Index is flat with a downward bias, lower by less than 0.1%. And Singapore's Straits Times Index is in the red, not by much, down by just 0.4%. Now, here at home, Philippine stocks rallied sharply Tuesday, posting one of their strongest performances this year as investors welcomed a peaceful midterm election and a 90-day tariff truce between of our midterm elections, while global markets also climbed on reports that the US and China have agreed to temporarily roll back tariffs and resume trade talks. Now, right now, as of 10:14 this morning, the main gauge is trading to the downside in the red with a slight negative bias, down by less than 0.1% to 65.60. The broad all shares index flat with a downward bias as well at 38.04. As for the sub-indices, we're seeing a mixed picture. The financials, industrial, and holding firms are in the red, while the property, services, and mining and oil counters are trying to buck the market's current downtrend. Now, so far, we've got 271 million shares traded, valued at about 1.3 billion pesos. Now, we've got 59 advancers and 59 decliners, and 42 stocks are unchanged. Now, at the currency market, the peso opens weaker at 55 to the greenback, slipping from its previous close of 55.80. Now, Japanese automaker Nissan posts an 88% drop in operating profit for its last fiscal year, earning just $472 million amid slumping global sales. In a bid to stay competitive, the company is launching a major restructuring plan that includes 11,000 job cuts and a slowdown in vehicle production. Nissan's troubles reflect wider headwinds across the global auto industry, from weak demand in the US and China to the collapse of its planned merger with Honda. The company is also grappling with US trade tariffs and mounting competition from China's fast-rising electric vehicle makers, a shift that could reshape supply chains worldwide, including right here in Southeast Asia. For the Philippines, where Nissan operates manufacturing and distribution facilities, industry players are watching closely for potential impact on jobs, part suppliers, and trade ties. New CEO Ivan Espinosa now faces the challenge of reversing Nissan's decline and repositioning it for the new auto landscape. Meantime, Japan's Honda Motor expects a 70% drop in net profit for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 as U.S. trade tariffs continue to disrupt its global operations. The company is now projecting just $1.7 billion in net profit over the next year, which is sharply down from $5.7 billion previously. Honda says that the tariffs, combined with post-pandemic recovery costs, could cut into earnings by as much as $3 billion. For the Philippines, this raises concerns over possible spillover effects on auto parts exports, logistics providers, and regional supply chains, particularly as Honda has a long history of assembly, operations, and sales in the country. Analysts note Honda may be in a stronger position than some of its peers, with over 60% of its U.S. sales locally produced, buffering it from the full brunt of import duties. Still, the company puts its EV supply chain project in Canada on hold for 2 years, citing weakening demand in the electrical vehicle market. The slowdown could also influence EV strategies across Asia, Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, where the market is still in its early stages of transition. We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Let's check on the partial and unofficial results in the senatorial race. As of 9:15 a.m., re-electionist Senator Bongo continues to lead with 26,488,398 votes. Coming in second is former Senator Bam Aquino, followed by Senator Bato de la Rosa in third. ACT CIS Representative Erwin Tulfo holds fourth place, with former Senator Kiko Pangilinan at fifth. Rodante Marcoleta is at sixth, followed by former Senator Ping Lacson in seventh. Former Senate President Tito Sotto is in eighth place. Senator Pia Cayetano ranks ninth, with Cavite Representative Camille Villar at 10th. Senators Lito Lapid and Amy Marcos complete the Magic 12, rounding out the top contenders so far. Let's check on how things are shaping up in the party list race. Akbayan party list remains in the lead with over 2.7 million votes. Duterte Youth and Tigong complete the top 3, while 4Ps and ACT CIS round out the top 5. With only a limited number of seats up for grabs, these positions could make a big difference in policy direction for the next Congress. New dynamics await the Senate following the midterm elections. The surprise comeback of former Senators Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan signals a shift in the upper chamber, bringing back familiar opposition voices. But the Duterte bloc remains intact, with key allies Bongo, Bato de la Rosa, Rodante Marcoleta, and Amy Marcos regaining their seats. If Camille Villar, now in top 12, sides with the Dutertes, it could prevent the Senate from securing the 2/3 vote needed for an impeachment to push through. While the composition doesn't guarantee legislative blocks just yet, it does offer a first glimpse into the alignments that could shape the 2028 presidential race. Just days after the election, it's clear that Vice President Sara Duterte's statements are shaping key electoral outcomes. While many lawmakers who supported the investigation into VP Sara and her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, are still leading in the race, it remains uncertain if the 11-member House prosecution panel will stay intact. Congressional contests remain extremely tight, with incumbents holding only slim margins over their challengers. During a campaign sortie for Manila mayoral candidate Isko Moreno, VP Sara criticized Representatives Joel Chua, Roland Valeriano, and Benny Abante, all of whom now hold narrow leads in their respective districts. ACT-CIS party list representative Erwin Tulfo secures a top spot in the senatorial race, well within the winning circle. Tulfo ranks 4th in the partial and unofficial count, consistent with his performance in pre-election surveys, where he emerged as a crowd favorite. In an interview on the Bilyonaryo news channel, Tulfo responded to criticisms that his family is becoming a political dynasty. He says he supports reforms to curb Kamag-anak Incorporated, a term used to describe the dominance of political families who hold multiple elected posts across the government. Tulfo says he's willing to back measures that would limit this practice, even if it affects members of his own family.
Siguro masasabi ko lang, tingin-tingin muna sa paligid. Kasi actually, maraming masasagasaan.
That's true. Yes.
Hindi lang naman po ang Tulfo, 2, 3 tumatakbo. Pero, sige, sasagutin ko na lang, sabi ko nga, pag may bill na final and Senator Lacson was saying he's going to file another one, I'll support it.
Oh, okay.
Kasi hindi po kami pinakamagaling na tao. We're not the best. We're not most charitable people in this land. Marami pa, I'm sure. So, give them a chance. Pag may pumasa na batas,
This year's senatorial race comes a surprise for former Senator Kiko Pangilinan, who wasn't even in contention according to pre-election surveys. Following his strong showing, Pangilinan called on pollsters to review their methodologies to better reflect ground sentiment. He also attributed his comeback to a strong campaign finish and to his team's push to counter online disinformation.
We got endorsements from the 2 biggest provinces, Cavite and Cebu and Cavite. And then we were in Quezon City sa last day. Tapos sa umaga yon. Tapos sa gabi, nandun na kami sa Naga. And then yung BARM, 1 week before, I think yung support sa amin ni BAM maliwanag. No? Mukhang abulto nung mga hindi siguro nasisiyahan sa bangayan nung dalawang nag-uumpugang bato, for lack of a better term, nakita kami bilang posibleng alternatibo. That's why we're ranking high.
The voice of the youth demands to be heard. That's according to human rights lawyer Chel Diokno, whose party list, Akbayan, currently leads the race. Diokno attributes their strong showing to the youth, a demographic that now makes up a significant portion of the voting population. He previously ran for senator in 2019 and in 2022 but fell short of making it into the Magic 12.
Actually, lumabas nga sa balita bago pa ng halalan na around 63% ng mga botante natin ay millennial at Gen Z. Malaking factor yon sa tingin ko sa nangyaring resulta sa party list. Dahil the younger voters, iba ang hinahanap nila eh. At siyempre, dahil sila ay kabataan, malakas pa rin yung idealism sa kanila, ang klaseng leader na gusto nila ay tingin ko mas progresibo, yung leader na sa tingin nila ay talagang lalaban para sa kanila at sa buong Pilipinas. Kaya sa akin, malaking factor nga yung youth na mas bata ang voting population natin ngayon. Yes, halos lahat ng nasa team ko, with only the exception of one or two, are all young. And siyempre, in today's age kasi, hindi naman yung dati kasi sinasabi nila yung kampanya ay ground war at saka air war. Ibig sabihin ng air war, traditional media. Pero ngayon, ang labanan talaga nasa online eh. Nasa mga social media platforms. And kailangan talaga ng isang team na alam nila yung mga nagte-trending, alam nila yung mga uso, at alam din nila yung paano mag-generate ng content. At the same time, matagal na rin ko na rin nais na maging boses ng batas in the sense na para maintindihan ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino kung ano yung batas. Kasi para napakalayo sa kanila yung batas. Samantalang araw-araw talagang may epekto sa atin lahat yon.
Re-electionist Pasig Mayor Vico Soto scores a landslide win, securing his third and final term in office. Soto received 351,000 votes, while his rival Sara Vizcaya managed 29,000 votes. Vizcaya has conceded defeat, saying that the right time will come. Mayor Vico, known for his simple and effective style of governance, had this to say about his victory.
Kung di naman nagtrabaho ang city government the last 6 years, siyempre, ang tao maghahanap ng iba. It's a validation that what we are doing and what we are fighting for is what the people want. Na hindi ito basta may naisip lang ako isang araw tapos so ito na yung gagawin or ito na yung sasabihin. Hindi po. Ito yung talagang, ito yung gusto ng mga Pasigenyo. Tingin ko sa resulta ng halalan na ito, napakita natin ito overwhelmingly.
In Manila, Isko Moreno makes a strong political comeback, returning to City Hall for a second term as mayor. Moreno's proclamation was delayed due to transmission issues in several precincts on Monday. Once officially declared the winner, Yorme thanked his supporters and outlined some of his priorities for his return to City Hall.
For the meantime, maraming salamat mga batang Maynila. I hope, maiayos natin ulit ang puso. We will continue to pursue the concept of MBN, yung minimum basic needs. Housing, education, healthcare, and jobs. But initially, yung cleanliness and orderliness and the peace and order situation of the city.
Several of Moreno's opponents, including his former ally, Honey Lacuna and Sam Versosa, have already conceded. And here's what Yorme had to say about his rivals in the race.
At the end of the day, taga Maynila sila, di ba? Yung magiging mamamayan ko rin sila. And as I have been doing and committed to do, sa Maynila, pantay-pantay.
We're taking a quick breather. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump announces plans to lift sanctions on Syria, a move with far-reaching implications for global trade and geopolitical alignments. The announcement came during his Middle East tour, which began in Saudi Arabia, where Trump said he was responding to a request from Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. In return, a massive deal, $600 billion in Saudi investments committed to the United States, and a $142 billion arms package. The lifting of sanctions marks a major shift for war-torn Syria, which has been subject to heavy U.S. economic restrictions since 2011 over civil war violence and human rights abuses. With the collapse of Syria's previous regime in December 2024, U.S. officials now see an opening for reintegration into global markets. Now, the move could revive Syria's energy sector, spur infrastructure rebuilding, and reopen trade routes critical to the region, with potential ripple effects for global oil, logistics, and defense contracting. Trump says it's time for Syria to, quote, move forward.
And I'm very pleased to announce that Secretary Marco Rubio will be meeting with the new Syrian foreign minister in Turkey later this week. And very importantly, after discussing the situation in Syria with the Crown Prince, your Crown Prince, and also with President Erdogan of Turkey, who called me the other day and asked for a very similar thing, among others, and friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East. I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
The Trump administration signed several new strategic agreements with Saudi Arabia during President Donald Trump's visit to the United Kingdom. The deals could pave the way for closer military and economic cooperation between the two nations. Speaking at a regional investment forum in Riyadh, Trump praised Middle Eastern leaders, signaling a reset in the U.S. relations across the Gulf. According to Saudi state media, the agreements cover key sectors including energy, defense, mining, and infrastructure. The White House says Saudi Arabia is set to invest $600 billion in the U.S., including a massive $142 billion defense package. Trump is expected to meet with Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa in Riyadh before he heads to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, part of his first major international trip since beginning his second term. He is joined by a delegation of U.S. business leaders, including Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk.
With this trip, we're adding over $1 trillion more in terms of investment into our country and buying our products. And, you know, nobody makes military equipment like us. We have the best military equipment, the best missiles, the best rockets, the best everything. Best submarines, by the way, but it's going to go a lot higher. You see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it. There's no better place to make a future or make a fortune.
The high-profile deals could redefine U.S. strategic and commercial ties in the Gulf, with wide-ranging implications for energy markets, defense supply chains, and global trade. On another front, the families of Israeli hostages gather outside the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, calling on President Donald Trump to help secure the release of their loved ones still held in Gaza. The protest comes just a day after Hamas releases Eden Alexander, the last known living American hostage, ahead of Trump's arrival in the region. U.S. envoys Adam Bowler and Steve Witkoff meet with the families for nearly 2 hours, discussing options to bring more hostages home. Of the 58 still held in Gaza, relatives believe only around 20 are still alive. U.S. officials say that the deal that led to Alexander's release, brokered with minimal involvement from Israel, could lay the groundwork for future negotiations.
Mr. President Trump, the entire people of Israel are waiting for your salvation from you. You are the only one who can bring every hostages and don't give up on the people of Israel. We believe you can end this war and bring all the hostages back home.
The new Pope is now Instagram official, and Filipinos around the world are tuning in. The Vatican Press Office confirms that social media accounts for Pope Leo XIV have gone live. He keeps the official @PontiffX handle on X, first used by Pope Benedict and later by Pope Francis, and now has a fresh account on Instagram. Pope Francis's old profile will remain archived and publicly accessible. With millions of Catholics, Filipino Catholics, at home and abroad, the new Pope's online presence is seen as a powerful tool for reaching the global faithful, including many overseas Filipino workers. Pope Leo will be formally installed as the new leader of the Catholic Church in a Mass on Sunday, May 18th. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.